The first time I saw my wife naked with another person, it wasn't some stranger. It was my own sister. Yeah, let that sink in. My wife of 6 years. The woman I trusted with everything. And my sister, my own flesh and blood. Both of them tangled up in a way I can never unsee. And the worst part? I didn't catch them in the act. I didn't even go looking for it. I found it by accident, on a dusty old iPad we hadn't touched in years. Now before I break this down, if you're into true insane revenge stories, the kind that make your jaw drop, make sure you subscribe because trust me, what I did to them, it's something they'll never recover from. So let's rewind. 6 years of marriage. 6 years of thinking I was the luckiest man alive. My wife, gorgeous, funny, magnetic. The kind of woman everyone admires, and she chose me. And my sister? 3 years older, bossy, sometimes annoying, but still family. The last person on earth I'd ever suspect would betray me. But betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the people closest to you. That Saturday, I was cleaning up and found the iPad under a pile of old magazines. My first thought, cool, I'll wipe it and sell it. But when I powered on, my stomach flipped. It was still synced to my wife's account. Messages, photos, notes, everything. And then, like the universe wanted to slap me across the face, a notification popped up from my sister to my wife. Do you still feel me from last night? I swear my heart stopped beating. I opened it, and what I found was worse than any nightmare I could imagine. Flirty messages, nudes, plans, laughter at my expense. They used my schedule, my job, my gym hours to carve out time for each other. My life became their cover story. And in those messages, they mocked me, mocked my trust, mocked how clueless I was. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat down on the floor, staring into nothing for 10 solid minutes. And then something inside me snapped into place. Because right then I knew one thing. If I confronted them now, I'd lose. But if I waited, if I played it smart, I could destroy them both. If part one was the gut punch, part two was the knife twisting in my back. Because once I saw those first disgusting messages between my wife and my sister, I couldn't stop. My hand was shaking, my vision blurry, but I kept scrolling. And every tap of my finger pulled me deeper into a nightmare I didn't even know I was living. You ever go through someone's texts and feel like you're reading a completely different reality? Like your whole life was just a stage play, and you were the clueless idiot in the background? That was me. Message after message. Picture after picture. Not just dirty talk, though there was plenty of that. No, they were making plans. Laughing about me. Coordinating their little meetups like some twisted spy operation. One text burned into my brain forever. When he goes to the gym at 6, we'll have at least an hour. Don't forget to park down the street. An hour. An hour in my house. My bed. Using my life as their calendar. And the photos. God, not just nudes, but selfies together, goofy faces, even pictures with my dog in the background. My freaking dog. They were that comfortable. That careless. Like I didn't even exist. I remember sitting there, my mouth dry, my hands sweating on that stupid iPad, thinking, this is my reality? This is my life. It wasn't just betrayal. It was mockery. They talked about me like I was some dumb roommate they had to work around. My wife writing, he thinks I'm working late? LOL. If only he knew what I was really doing. My sister replying, don't worry, he'll never figure it out. He trusts us too much. Too much. That line cut deeper than anything else. Because it was true. I did trust them. Completely. And they weaponized it against me. And here's where the pain started turning into something else. Something colder. Something sharper. Because the more I read, the less I felt like a victim. And the more I started to feel like a hunter. I realized they thought they were untouchable. That I'd never find out. That even if I did, I'd crumble. Cry. Beg. Maybe even forgive. They underestimated me so badly, it was insulting. So, as I sat there, scrolling through months of betrayal, I stopped asking why. Why will my wife do this? Why will my sister stoop this low? Why me? The why didn't matter anymore. What mattered was how I was going to burn their little world to the ground without them seeing it coming. And that's when I noticed something that flipped the switch completely. In one of the threads, my wife wrote to my sister, Wish you were Karina tonight instead. She's been liking my posts again. Makes me feel wanted. Karina. At first, I thought it was some inside joke. But then I realized they were talking about another woman. Someone my wife had been crushing on. Someone who wasn't even real in their lives. And right then, a plan started forming in my head. Because if my wife was hungry for attention from some imaginary girl online, then maybe I could give her exactly what she wanted. Not in the way she expected. I didn't know it yet, but Karina was about to be born. And through her, I was going to get everything I needed to make this revenge legendary. Revenge isn't about rage. Rage burns out too fast. Revenge is about patience, control, and precision. And that's exactly what I was about to deliver. The night I read those disgusting messages, I barely slept. I lay in bed next to my wife, next to the woman who was betraying me with my own sister, while she snored softly like nothing was wrong. And as I stared at the ceiling, my brain was running wild with possibilities. That name, Karina, kept echoing in my head. The way my wife had practically confessed in her text that she wished Karina was in her bed instead. The way she craved attention, like she couldn't survive without it. That was the key. By morning, I had made my decision. I was going to give her Karina. Now, I'm no tech wizard, but I know enough about social media to play the game. I created a brand new Instagram account. No followers, no posts, just a blank slate. Then I started building her. Karina was everything my wife wanted to see in herself. Gorgeous, fit, confident, a little mysterious. I grabbed a collection of stock model photos, nothing too obvious, just believable enough, and posted them with generic captions. Stuff like, new week, new energy. Some nights just feel different. Cheesy? Maybe. But it worked. Within days, Karina looked like a real person. I even followed random accounts, fitness pages, travel bloggers, fashion stuff, just to make her profile look alive. Then came a next step. I had Karina like a couple of my wife's photos. Nothing too desperate, just enough to get noticed. And, oh boy, she noticed. Not even an hour later, my wife had followed Karina back. A few hours after that, she slid into Karina's DMs. Hey, thanks for the likes. Do we know each other? That was it. Hook, line, sinker. I played it cool. Short replies at first. Casual, friendly, nothing too heavy. Then, slowly, I started turning up the heat. Compliments, flirty comments, pretending to admire her strength and confidence. Basically feeding her the exact validation she was starving for. And she ate it up. Meanwhile, in the real world, she was acting different, happier, distracted. She'd smile at her phone more, spend extra time getting ready in the morning, even seemed less interested in me, like she was already living a secret life with her new friend. And all the while, I was watching from 2 steps ahead. But Karina wasn't my only weapon. While I was building that trap online, I was also setting up the physical one. I ordered a couple of hidden cameras, tiny, wireless, the kind you can stick anywhere. One went in the living room, one in the bedroom, one in the guest room. I wasn't leaving anything to chance. Because here's the thing, texts and DMs are one thing. They can be denied, twisted, explained away. But video is undeniable. So every time I told my wife I'd be working late or going to the gym, I knew the cameras were rolling, waiting, watching, recording. And trust me, it didn't take long. The first time it happened, I almost couldn't believe it. I checked the footage, and there they were, my wife and my sister, on my couch, laughing, kissing, like my house was their playground. I sat there watching the recording, my stomach twisted, but my mind laser-focused. This wasn't just evidence. This was ammunition. And with Karina tightening the leash online and the cameras stacking up proof in the real world, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to ruin them. Every hunter knows there comes a moment when you stop tracking and finally set the snare. For me, that moment had arrived. By now, Karina had completely taken over my wife's attention. She was checking her phone constantly, smiling at messages, even sneaking off into the bathroom late at night just to text. She thought she was falling for a stranger. She didn't realize she was falling into the most dangerous trap of her life. At the same time, The hidden cameras in my house were doing their job flawlessly. Each week, I had new footage. Sometimes they used the living room, sometimes the bedroom. Once, unbelievably, the kitchen counter. I had hours of material, enough to bury them 100 times over. But here's the thing. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted precision. I wanted to drop the hammer in a way that would leave no room for denial, no way out. No, maybe we can talk about this. I wanted their world to collapse in a single, unforgettable moment. So, I planned my final trap. First, I staged a fake business trip. I told my wife I'd be out of town for 3 days, even went so far as to pack a suitcase and leave it in the car. I made sure my sister knew too. After all, their little rendezvous depended on knowing when I wasn't around. Then, I set the cameras to stream directly to a secure folder. Not just recordings, live feeds I could access from anywhere. If they thought they were safe in my house, I was going to watch it unfold in real time. Sure enough, the very first night I was gone, it happened. I sat in a motel room across town, staring at my laptop screen as my wife and sister stumbled into my bedroom, laughing, wine glasses in hand. They didn't waste time. Clothes dropped. Voices got lower, more intimate. They thought they were safe. And me? I sat there, not with heartbreak, but with something sharper. Satisfaction. Cold, calculated satisfaction. Every second that passed was another nail in their coffin. But I wasn't ready to strike just yet. No, I needed more than proof. I needed spectacle. That's when the idea hit me, a family dinner. My parents, my sister, my wife. Even my wife's boss, who I invited casually under the pretense of, "You're basically family, always welcome." Everyone together, smiling, eating, laughing. And then, without warning, the reveal. It was perfect. They wouldn't just be caught. They'd be exposed. Publicly. Irreversibly. For days, I prepared. I clipped the clearest parts of the footage. Nothing too long, just enough to leave no doubt. I transferred it onto a flash drive, neatly labeled with something harmless. Vacation 2022. My wife would never suspect. On the day of the dinner, she even helped me set the table, humming to herself. She had no idea she was preparing her own execution. And I stayed calm, collected, smiling at her, playing the part of the loving husband one last time. Because deep down, I knew this was it. The final trap was set. And when it sprung, there would be no escape. The night of the dinner was approaching, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. For weeks, I had been collecting footage, feeding the Karina fantasy, and smiling in the face of two people who thought they were untouchable. But this was going to be the climax of my plan. I knew I couldn't just confront them in private. That would give them room to cry, to manipulate, to twist the narrative. No, I needed an audience. I needed witnesses. I wanted their betrayal to collapse under the crushing weight of exposure. So I started making calls. First, my parents. I told them I wanted to have a family dinner, just to reconnect. Mom was thrilled. Dad was skeptical, but agreed. Then my sister. She didn't even hesitate. She said she'd bring a bottle of wine. The audacity of it made me laugh when I hung up. Then came the most important invitation. My wife's boss. He had met me a couple of times at company events, always polite, always praising how lucky I was to have such a dedicated wife. I reached out with a friendly, casual message. "Hey, we're having a little family dinner this weekend. You're practically part of the family. Would love to have you join." To my surprise, he said yes immediately. That was it. The stage was set. The day of the dinner, I played my part perfectly. My wife hummed while setting the table, placing plates and silverware as if she wasn't hours away from having her world obliterated. She even kissed me on the cheek at one point, and I forced myself not to flinch. Inside, though, I was a coiled spring, waiting for the right moment. The guests began to arrive. My mom brought her famous casserole. My dad shook my hand firmly, giving me that look only fathers give their sons, a mix of pride and curiosity. My sister showed up in a dress far too fancy for a simple dinner, smiling like she was the star of the night. And finally, my wife's boss walked through the door, carrying a bottle of wine and looking pleasantly surprised to be included. We all sat down around the table. Laughter filled the air. My mom told embarrassing childhood stories about me. My dad made jokes about his cooking skills. or lack thereof. On the surface, it looked like a perfectly normal family gathering. But underneath, I was counting the minutes. Because on the TV behind me, plugged in and ready to go, was the flash drive. Vacation 2022. At one point, my wife leaned over to my sister and whispered something that made them both giggle. I watched their faces closely, their eyes sparkling with secrets, their shoulders brushing in a way that only I seemed to notice. And then I realized this wasn't just about catching them. This was about breaking them, about stripping away the illusion they'd wrapped themselves in. So I stood up, glass of wine in hand, and raised it high. Before we eat dessert, I thought it might be fun to share a little video. A surprise, actually. Something from our last vacation. My mom clapped her hands together, excited. My dad leaned back, waiting. My wife turned toward me with a curious smile. My sister smirked, clearly thinking she was in on some joke. They had no idea. I walked over to the TV, pressed the button, and selected the file. And as the screen lit up, silence fell over the table. Because this wasn't a vacation video. This was the beginning of their end. The screen flickered to life, and for a second, everyone leaned forward, expecting palm trees, beaches, and family smiles. But instead, the sound of laughter filled the room. Not the kind of laughter that belongs on vacation. No, this was darker, familiar. It was my wife's laugh, and my sister's. The video was grainy at first, but as the picture sharpened, there they were. My wife and my sister, on my couch, kissing, hands all over each other. The silence in the room was deafening. My mom gasped so loudly it almost echoed. She slapped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide, already shaking her head like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. My dad didn't say a word. He just froze, his jaw tight, fists clenching on the table. And my wife? She turned pale instantly. Her fork clattered against her plate. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice breaking. But the video kept playing. Now it showed them in my bedroom. My bed. Sheets twisted, their voices unmistakable. My sister giggled, saying my name mockingly between kisses. My wife shushed her, laughing too. I watched my mother's face crumble. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at my sister, her daughter, with pure devastation. My father stood up, so slowly it was terrifying, and walked straight out of the room without a word. And then the boss. He stared at the screen, his mouth slightly open, horrified. His eyes darted to my wife, then back to me. He didn't need an explanation. The evidence was there, playing out in full, humiliating clarity. My sister pushed back her chair, her face ghost white. "Turn it off! Turn it off!" she screamed, her voice high and desperate. But I didn't. I leaned back in my chair, calm, almost serene, and said, "Enjoying the vacation?" That was when my wife completely broke. She burst into tears, her hands trembling as she tried to grab the remote. "Please stop. Please," she sobbed. The boss finally spoke, his voice flat and cold. "We'll talk Monday," he said to her, then shook his head and set his napkin down. He didn't even finish his food. He just left. My sister sat frozen, tears spilling down her face, unable to look at anyone. And my wife? She dropped to her knees beside me, crying, begging, reaching for my hand. "Please, I can explain. It's not what it looks like." I pulled my hand away. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said, my voice steady. "And just so you know, I've already filed for divorce." The table was silent except for her sobbing. My mom stood up, shaking, and left the room too. I could hear her crying in the hallway. Finally, I stood, looked at my sister, then at my wife. "You two destroyed everything. But you know what? Tonight, I destroyed you." And with that, I walked away, leaving them both broken in the ruins of the life they thought they had. The dinner was over. The show was done, and the trap had sprung perfectly. The house was silent after the video, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the walls themselves are holding their breath. I walked out of the dining room, leaving my wife and sister to drown in their humiliation, and I swear I could feel their desperation clawing at my back. I didn't look back. Not once. My dad was sitting on the porch when I stepped outside. He didn't say anything, just stared into the dark yard, his jaw tight. After a moment, he muttered, "Your mother's heartbroken. I can't even look at her right now." His voice cracked a little, something I'd never heard from him before. Then he stood up, put a hand on my shoulder, and walked away into the night. Inside, I could hear my mother sobbing. My sister tried to comfort her, but Mom pushed her away. "Don't you dare touch me," she cried, her voice breaking. "You disgust me." I'll never forget the sound of my mother rejecting her own daughter. As for my wife, her sobs turned into screams. She followed me into the hallway, mascara streaking down her face, clutching at my arm like her life depended on it. "Please don't do this. We can fix it. We can work through this," she begged. I looked her in the eye, and for the first time in years, I felt nothing. No love, no pity, just emptiness. "You and my sister made your choices," I said coldly. "Now you can live with them." She collapsed against the wall, sliding down onto the floor, still crying. And then, the final blow came from the man she never expected. Her boss. I saw him outside, standing by his car. He caught my eye, shook his head slowly, and said, "She's done. She won't be working with us anymore." He didn't even raise his voice. He didn't have to. His words were a death sentence. When he drove away, I knew her career was finished. The fallout was instant. Within days, my parents cut contact with my sister. My dad refused to speak her name. My mom stopped answering her calls altogether. She tried to apologize, sent messages, begged for forgiveness, but none of it mattered. She had burned the bridge so completely, there was no rebuilding it. My wife didn't fare any better. Word spread fast. Her boss wasn't quiet about what he'd seen. He didn't share the video, but the implication was enough. Soon, everyone at her job knew she was unprofessional. She tried to defend herself, but no one wanted to hear it. By the end of the week, she was unemployed. I stayed quiet through it all. I didn't shout, didn't gloat, didn't even engage. I just filed the divorce papers, packed a few bags, and left. The last time I saw my wife before the divorce was finalized, she looked like a ghost. Thin, exhausted, eyes hollow. She whispered, "I made a mistake." I told her no. "You made a choice." And I walked away. As for my sister, she left town. I heard later she moved to another city, tried to start over. But no matter where she goes, she'll always carry the shame of that night, the memory of our mother's tears, our father's silence, and my final words. The revenge was complete. But for me, it wasn't about watching them crumble. It was about finally being free. For the first time in years, I wasn't living a lie. And that was the greatest victory of all. When the dust finally settled, I was standing in the ruins of my old life. But instead of feeling broken, I felt lighter than I had in years. It was as if the weight of 6 years of lies had finally been lifted off my chest. I moved out of the house the very next week. I didn't take much, just clothes, personal items, and the old iPad that started it all. Funny, I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. I placed it on a shelf in my new apartment, almost like a trophy, a reminder of what I survived. The divorce went through faster than I expected. My lawyer told me that with the evidence I had, she didn't stand a chance. My wife didn't even try to fight it. She signed the papers, eyes hollow, and walked out without a word. For someone who once loved attention, she couldn't stand being looked at anymore. My sister tried harder. She sent letters, long, emotional apologies. She called from numbers I didn't recognize. Once, she even showed up at my apartment. I didn't answer the door. I couldn't, because every time I thought of her, I remember my mother's broken voice saying, "You disgust me," and I wasn't ready to erase that. So I cut her off completely. And with them both gone, I was free to focus on myself for the first time in years. At first, it was strange. I wasn't used to silence. I wasn't used to walking into a clean apartment that stayed clean because no one else was living there. I wasn't used to not second-guessing where my wife was or whether my sister was lying to me. It was peaceful. I started hitting the gym more, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I signed up for therapy, something I never thought I'd do, and it was one of the best decisions I made. My therapist didn't just help me process the betrayal. She helped me figure out why I had ignored the red flag for so long, why I let people walk all over my trust. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was growing. A few months later, I booked a one-way ticket to Bali. I told myself it would just be a short vacation, but deep down I knew I wanted more than that. I wanted to put an ocean between me and the wreckage of my past. And Bali was everything I needed. Warm sun, endless beaches, strangers who didn't know my story. I hiked, I surfed, I sat on the sand at night, staring at the stars. For once, my mind was quiet. I remember one night in particular. I was sitting at a beach bar, sipping a drink, when a fellow traveler asked me, "So what brings you here?" I thought about lying, about saying something casual like vacation, but instead I told him the truth. I told him my wife cheated on me with my sister, and I exposed them in front of everyone. He stared at me for a moment, then burst out laughing, shaking his head in disbelief. "Man, that's brutal," he said. "But damn, that's a story." And for the first time, I laughed too. It no longer hurt to say it out loud. It didn't define me anymore. It was just something that happened, a chapter I closed. That's when I realized I wasn't just free of them. I was free of the pain. And standing there on that island, I knew my story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. Time has a way of dulling wounds, but betrayal leaves scars that never fully fade. Months after the dinner, after the divorce, after Bali, I thought I was done with him. I thought silence was the final chapter. But I was wrong. One night, back home for Bali, I opened my email and found a message waiting for me. The sender? My sister. The subject line said only, "Please." I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity won. Inside was a long, rambling letter. She wrote about how sorry she was, how she had ruined everything, how she would give anything to take it back. She begged me to talk to her. "I'm not the same person anymore," she wrote. "I need my brother back." I closed the email without replying. A week later, I got a text from my ex-wife. It was the first time she had dared to contact me since the divorce. "Can we meet? Just for coffee. I need closure. Please." Closure. That word made me laugh. What she wanted wasn't closure. She wanted relief. She wanted forgiveness to ease her own guilt. I ignored her too, but ignoring them didn't stop them. My sister tried again, this time through my parents. She showed up at their house, crying on the porch, begging to see me. My mother told her to leave. My father shut the door at her face. My ex-wife went even further. She showed up at my new apartment one night, knocking on the door until my neighbors started peeking out. I didn't answer. Eventually, she slid a note under the door. It said, "I still love you. I'll always love you. Please, don't shut me out forever." I read it once. Then I tore it into pieces. And that's when I realized something important. They weren't haunting me anymore. I wasn't avoiding them out of fear or pain. I was ignoring them because they no longer mattered. Their words couldn't touch me. Their tears couldn't move me. Their presence or absence didn't change my life. For the first time, I had the upper hand. So I decided to send a message. Not to them directly, but to the world. To everyone. I logged into the Karina account, the same account that started their downfall, and posted a single quote. "Betrayal never comes from enemies. And forgiveness is a gift you don't owe to those who stab you in the back." It went viral. Thousands of likes, shares, comments. People connected with it, not knowing the story behind it, but I knew. And I knew they saw it too. That was my closure. Not meeting them, not forgiving them, but showing them, once and for all, that they no longer had any power over me. My sister and my ex-wife had destroyed themselves. And me? I was finally free. Life after betrayal is like stepping into sunlight after years in a dark cave. At first, it blinds you. You stumble, unsure, scared of what's next. But slowly, your eyes adjust. You start to see the world for what it really is. And if you're lucky, you see yourself too. That's exactly what happened to me. When the dust of divorce and drama finally cleared, I was alone for the first time in years. And you know what? It wasn't terrifying. It was liberating. I didn't have to check anyone's phone. I didn't have to question where someone was late at night. I didn't have to live with that constant gnawing doubt in the back of my mind. For the first time, my peace was mine. I threw myself into rebuilding. Therapy gave me clarity. The gym gave me strength. Traveling gave me perspective. Bali reminded me that the world is bigger than the lies two people spun around me. And every day, I woke up without that heavy knot of betrayal pressing on my chest. And then something unexpected happened. I met someone. Not in a bar, not on an app, not through friends. Just life. A chance encounter at a bookstore, of all places. She wasn't flashy or dramatic. She didn't play games. She was kind. She listened. She was honest. It felt strange at first, like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. But it never did. She showed me what real trust feels like, what real partnership looks like. And it made me realize just how badly I had been starving for the basics all those years. No lies, no secrets, just peace. And that's the thing I want anyone listening to take away from my story. Betrayal doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning. Sometimes losing everything you thought mattered is exactly what you need to find out what truly does. My wife and my sister thought they broke me. They thought they destroyed me. But in the end, they freed me. And I'll never thank them for that. But I'll never forget it either. Because those scars remind me who I am now. Stronger, smarter, and finally, happy. So that's it. That's how my story ends. Not in ruins. Not in bitterness. But in freedom. Now let me ask you this. Did I do the right thing? Was exposing them in front of everyone the right call? Or would you have handled it differently? Tell me in the comments. I want to know what you would have done in my shoes. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe so you never miss more insane revenge stories, and share your thoughts below. Your support keeps these stories alive, and trust me, there are plenty more where this came from.